Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Merlin here. Thank you for joining me today on the second video of Satisfactory 1.0, learning the basics of the game itself. This is about a week on from the last video, which is probably around the beginning of October now. And in the first video, you may remember we went through, again, just the basic starting point. What do you need to do from the beginning? Kind of just getting your feet on the ground and just really not taking a lot of notice of all the other videos that are concentrating on big factories and trains and all that. Just concentrating on, where do I begin? What do I start with? You may remember we covered things like the smelter, which was obviously for things like your ore, turn them to ingots. We talked about the constructor, which is then turning those ingots into items that may be required at a later date. We covered tiers 0 to 2. At which point then the space elevator was completed, which then obviously allows us access to tiers 3 and 4. This last week has been about me trying to spend time getting things ready, and again, you may remember my last base was actually on the grassy fields. I've moved over to the rocky desert, so I kind of restarted again from the beginning, and again things kind of do change. I think I've kind of destroyed and rebuilt my base about 2 or 3 times since I've started doing it. I'm not actually at the base at the moment. I'm a bit further away. So, for example, let's look at the map, and then we just zoom in. My current base is over here. So this is where my hub is and the space elevator. But I'm currently located over here, which is where I built the new power plant. Now, today's video will be more about the tiers 3 and 4 items that you do get and what you're able to use them for. 2 of which are here. So the first thing is coal power. Let me just get out of the second thing, which is the tractor. I'll come back to that in a moment, but we'll just go down to the coal power. Now, this power generator gives you more power than the biomass burners. So the sooner as you can get to the coal power, the better. In my opinion, because first of all, you're no longer then chucking in regular items of biomass, biofuel, stuff like that. And once you've got the thing in place, once you've got the power station in place, it kind of sort of like runs itself. So let's just go underneath here. But you also need water extractors as well, just to kind of give you an idea of where you are. Now, for some reason, I'm stuck. There we go. That's better. Right, so let's just get back on here. And we'll just jump onto the pipe a minute just to give you... completely missed that together. Let's try again, shall we? All right. This is the problem with water pipes, because they are quite low down, and you do find that you have to slide underneath them. So it is difficult to get on top of them. Takes a bit of a knack after a while. There we go. That's fine. So again, you need the water extractor and then the pipes linked to the coal power stations. And then the coal then burns the water, which turns into steam, which then generates your power. Now, if you can imagine at the moment, biomass burners are about 30 megawatts a minute. These are 75. Now, I've just literally finished this particular power plant. So I say finished, it's built. There's no power running through it at the moment. In regards, there's no coal running through to it. Because I'm away from my original starting point, there are some coal nodes nearby, and I'm just kind of in the process of setting up a new mining process here so that I can then generate enough coal to run through these factories, and then that will then generate more power than what I've already got at the moment, and then the other one I'll just shut down. So that's the first thing one of the things you should be looking at in tier 3. As soon as you can get to this as soon as possible, the better, because it will help you kind of generate bigger and better buildings, or multiple things, for example, more smelters, more constructors, things like that. And the more you can get yourself ready on that, the better. The second thing, as I said, that comes out here is the tractor. Now, there are 2 things with regards to the tractor. One, you can just use it for yourself at the moment, and you are able to transport it's about, what's that? Is that 20? Where are we? So it's 25, I believe. Yeah, that's 25 slots. So you've got 25 slots of inventory that you can put into that to carry around, as well as obviously what you're already carrying around at the moment. Tractors themselves can be automated once you've set up routes, and that's something I haven't done yet because I'm not that far ahead at the moment. But for the purpose of today, we're just going to show you where we are in regards to this. So let's going to head back over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to head back over to a new area that I'm beginning to start as well. And then I'll explain what it is that I'm doing in regards to that before we then go through the remaining items of tiers 3 and 4. Also, one of the things we've just gone past now is a power tower platform. Now, these power tower platforms are better for power usage, because you can see you've got these two long wires here. Okay, these can be spread further apart than the normal poles, in a sense that they can be 300 meters apart rather than the poles that would be 100. The better things with this as well is you've got 2 power points on each platform, 2 separate kind of power areas. So the top point, there are 3 connectors. So for example here, I've got 1 connected there and 1 connected there. So it's 2 out of 3 being used, and these obviously connect other platforms. You then at the bottom have 4 feet. Each one is able to support a power pole or a building. So for example, you could just put a wire to, if I wanted to, I could put a wire to the factories that are there. Now, because I've got 16 factories and 8 water extractors, the likelihood is I'm going to use poles rather than this, because obviously there's only 4. But you can put a pole off of each one. So you are in theory quadrupling the size of the power cables that you had before. Okay, so that's why it's twofold. So I'm going to head over to the next area that I'm going to show you, and then we'll be back in a moment. Okay, so we're at the second area that I wanted to show you, and I started building this before I started the coal power station. Now, again, having seen lots of forums and other videos, there's a lot of talk about central storage, where to send things, etc., and that's fine in theory. But again, at the end of the video, I'll go through kind of my feelings on why I'm not in this position yet, and I think others that are the same part of me also aren't in this position. But taking that away from the moment, there in front of you there is a truck station, which you can, with the truck, plan automated journeys. So the general idea is that the truck has 2 stations, so A and B. For the first time, you transport the items. So say, for example, you want to transport a load of ore. You then, for the first time, you have to manually drive your vehicle from A to B. But you record your journey there and back. And once you've finished, it's sort of like a macro. It then does it for you. Now, obviously, what you don't want to do is you don't want to go all over the place and do U-turns and stuff like that. So when you are dealing with kind of planned paths, then basically you want to make it as smooth and as clean as possible. Now, again, the reason why I don't feel I'm ready for this yet is I don't have the right fuel. I mean, this thing runs on any fuel that you can gather, whether it's leaves, wood, biomass, or solid fuel, or even the other fuels that will come in time, so heavy-duty fuel and all that sort of thing. Now, if you're going to start planning kind of routes for your trucks or even your trains, I feel you need to be further on. So I just thought I'd cover this briefly for you, just to let you know where we are with this, and then come back to that maybe in a later video when I'm a bit more kind of settled on that basis. But this is kind of like something I was working towards in regards to moving stuff to certain locations. Now I'm going to head over to my current main base, so I'll be with you shortly. As you can see here, it is looking very active, with the word I'd like to use. It is also, again, still a work in progress, and there's our space elevator there waiting to be finished, part 2. In the top right hand corner of the screen, you can see that I'm missing some versatile frameworks, which need modular frameworks and also steel beams. So I'm kind of working towards that at the moment, but it'll take a little while to do that. Now, as I said, this is a bit higgledy-piggledy, and it will change again. There is no two ways about it. This is just to get me through this stage. Part of the reason behind that is that because I've gone through a lot of the Tier 3 and Tier 4 requirements, I've been able to gain certain things. So, for example, here you can see that we've got the normal power poles. Now, I have access now, if I go to the power, to Power Pole 2. Power Pole 2 gives you 7 connections rather than the original 4. And you may remember I just spoke just a moment ago regarding the power platforms. So with each of the power platforms having a leg for a pole, in theory, and expandable, but in theory, you could just from that one kind of pylon have 28 kind of power points coming out of. So you could you could put the 4 poles for the 4 legs, and then each pole has another 7. But then you expand that even further if it's a busy kind of area. Now, the reason why I wanted to say that this is a kind of work in progress is because I'm designing something different. And I'll talk about more about that at the end of the video. But at the moment, like I said, this is kind of, you've got like in the distance, you've got your smelters, you've got loads of construction going on here, you've got your assemblers here. The things I don't have at the moment are refineries and foundries. So we're going to cover basically what that does for you. So I'm going to just jump off of here. Yes, it's going to do a bit of damage to my health, but yeah, not a great deal. One other thing I remember regarding a tractor: don't ever get submerged in water. You lose it in the sense that you can't drive it out, and the only way to destroy it, to kind of restart the tractor is to kind of destroy it. And then rebuild a new one, because you'll have the supplies from on that basis. Now, of course, the issue you have there is if you're carrying a full inventory yourself, as there was a full inventory in the tractor, it then becomes very difficult to try to get things sorted out. So what I've had to do a couple of times now is that when I kind of misjudged where I'm going and got into a deep water, swam to the shore, created a couple of personal storage boxes, chucked in what I had in my own inventory, then destroyed the tractor, because the supplies that are in the tractor then default back to your own inventory, and then you can just rebuild the tractor and start again. But it's one of those things at the moment with vehicles that it doesn't take to water very well. So let's head over to the hub and talk more about the tiers 3 and 4. So, first thing I mentioned was coal power. Now, as I said before, coal power gives you that much more usage of power, which means you can expand more. Obviously, the next stage is going into things like oil and stuff like that. But, you're limited to what you can do at certain points. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen there, the items that's required then suddenly get more challenging, especially early game. So you've got reinforced plates, you've got rotors, and cables are easy, but the first two you have to start assembling stuff before you start getting this. You have your water extractor, which, as I said before, basically you need the water extractor to power the coal generator, and vice versa, so they work together. However, you can also have a water extractor for just that purpose, just to gather water, because there are recipes that are alternate recipes, that are better recipes that require water. So, for example, in concrete, it is just limestone. But you can have wet concrete, which is limestone and water, which gives you, I believe, is kind of like you get a better return when you're constructing it or crafting it. So you get more per minute than you would do at the moment. Pipelines, pipeline support, pipeline junction, and pipeline pump speak for themselves. It's all to do with the water extractor, how you connect them to. But they are, like with the conveyor belts, they're limited to the amount of water that can be transported there through. So again, when you see your factory-powered grids being set up, my one have just come from there. There are 16 generators, but they are powered by 8 water extractors over 2 grids. So otherwise you won't have enough water to power the generators in the first place, and they'll just keep tripping. So you have to do it in blocks. Fluid buffer, again, is kind of sort of speaks for itself, is where the water extractor can pass the water straight into the fluid buffer as a hold. Is like a storage unit, a bit like your ordinary storage units. Now, also, fluid speaks for itself in the sense that it's not just water. It can be oil, any other kind of liquid element that can go into those buffers. But I would imagine, having not built one yet, but I would imagine you want to keep, say, water going into one, oil into another, and so on and so forth. And obviously then coal becomes scannable. The transport we just covered, the tractor and the truck station, and again that will come in later on. This is where you start building things out of steel. So your foundry. So this is where things become more prominent because they become more requireable. I mean, for example, here this versatile framework is required for part 2 of your space elevator. So you need to create and craft a lot of steel. Now, steel ingots are made from iron ore and coal. So you've then got to work out how much coal do I need for the generators, for the power, and have I got enough left over to create steel ingots? So again, it's kind of a balancing act. And then you have what they call enhanced security. So at the moment, you've got the zapper for the animals. This takes it the next stage over, so it's like a Xeno basher, so it kind of is a bit more powerful for you. TS4, we've done some of these so far, but I haven't gone all the way. The blueprints design, this is where, and again, this is something I'm kind of holding back on. I can see its usage, but I'm holding back on it at the moment. Blueprint design is like where you can create a part. So let's just say you want to build a long bridge. Now you can't put the whole bridge in the designer. So what you do is you make it parts like at a time. So say your bridge is made up of pillars and obviously the road that goes above it, or the track that goes above it. So you make a small version of it, and then obviously every time you then come to build that, it's already made for you. So in theory, if it's a lot of work that needs doing, so like for example, it's a long bridge and you've got lots of pillars to do and you've got lots of kind of road to cover, then it is a kind of a good way of doing things. But I'm kind of holding back at the moment because I want to kind of leave that all alone because it's more complex. And I think, like a lot of people, I think we're just trying to get by with what we know at the moment before we start going down that route. Logistics Part 3 gives you access to bigger containers. So the industrial storage container is twice the size as an ordinary storage container. So you might find at the moment when you're collecting ore or things like concrete or limestone, you're running out of room. So the industrial one gives you that much more space. Conveyor belts 3 and the lift 3. So we're now heading into territory where you've got more items being moved per minute on the conveyor belt. So the initial one, conveyor belt 1, would only be able to move 60 items per minute. The conveyor belt 2 is 120, and the conveyor belt 3 is 270 resources per minute. So again, this is quite useful. Say, for example, you've got 2 mines, both chucking out 120 per minute. You can kind of merge them into one line of 270, and it copes more than copes on that basis. And then you've got a stackable pipeline support. Now, stackable pipeline supports are for those multiple pipelines. So you may remember in, I think it's, is it this one? It might have been in Tier 1 logistics. No, it's one of these. Give me a second. Logistics Mark 2. So we had a stackable conveyor pole, which you can obviously have multiple one on top of the other. And then you have, like, say, a conveyor belt on one, then another pole above it, the conveyor belt on that, another pole above it, a conveyor belt on that. Same goes with the pipeline support, where you have more than one pipeline available, running parallel above you or alongside you. Advanced steel then moves on to the next stage of steel production. So things like stators, motors, automated wiring is another thing that's required for your assembly, encased beams, and obviously the miner Mark II. So again, it says on the screen here default extraction is 120. That is based on a normal mode. So for example, if you have a normal iron ore node, then and that's going to run through at on a miner Mark 1 as 60 units. A miner Mark 2 will double that to make it 120 units. So again, the idea is to get yourself forward as much as you can to get that all running. Power structure we've covered, with the exception of power storage. Now, power storage is one of those items where you can store excess power. I've not used it yet. I do plan to use it when I've built the coal generators. But the idea is that if you are generating more than enough power, if you build storage units, it will store 100 megawatts per hour. So it will keep it for an hour and then dissipate, and then it keep it for an hour and dissipate. So it's just kind of like continually, you'd always have 100 units in one storage unit. Now, my plans are, as once the generators have been built properly and the grid's online, then I will kind of manufacture probably, I don't know, 2 dozen of these power storages, link it to the power unit, so any excess power that's coming off of the grid will then run into the storage units. And the final thing on this list is hypertubes. Now, again, haven't gone down that route yet, but a hypertube is designed for you to be able to travel, a bit like a train line, but actually rather than that on a train, it's just you sat in a tube going from one end to another. Again, it's one of those things that I've yet to need. I mean, it'd be useful, don't get me wrong, but I have yet to have the need to use it. So that's where we are regarding the hub's latest stage. Once we've completed phase 2 of the space elevator, I'll be able to then head into tiers 5 and 6, and that's going into things like, I would imagine, oil power and stuff like that, because oil power generators will give you more power again on that basis. So where do we go from here? So there's just a couple of things that I wanted to talk about other than what I've gone through already. So let me get back up to the tower, because again, it's kind of going back to what I was saying about how this is a work in progress. And I said at the beginning in the video that I'd mention it again. So let's just get back up the tower. These towers are useful, believe me. There we go. Okay. So, as you can see here, it's a mixture of buildings. You've got your smelters, constructors, and assemblers, and I need to have foundries and refineries as time goes on. The issue I'm finding at the moment, it's not. I'm not trying to be negative against my fellow content creators, not by any means, because what they're generating is absolutely amazing in regards to what factories are being built, how they're being built, how easy they look. But you have to remember, when you're in this early game, you will not have the facilities or the resources to build these massive factories and these massive rail line network or a truck network. Going back to what I was saying, the truck station, it's because you need to have those resources in place before you can start doing that. So currently, my recommendation is just to get through the stages any way you can with what you know and with what you can provide. So again, here you will see that I have got rotors and I have got reinforced plate. These were designed to merge into the smart plating, which I've now finished. Okay, but you also need them for other things. Not that's on the phase for the elevator. You'll need them for other reasons. You can see in the background I've got loads of screws running through at the moment, and that's because they're continually making these rotors, albeit slowly in the background, the assemblers. Over in the distance, I've got limestone that's creating concrete to the point that I've got a full unit of concrete. Up at the top of the hill, I've got a copper node that's generating copper ingots. Well, down the bottom is the copper ingots being generated, and again I'm full up with what I need. So I need to redesign what I've got here, but it's not just a simple case of redesigning to do exactly the same again. My recommendation is to try and make notes, copious notes of where you want to be at each stage. And look at the map for other areas. I mean, this is obviously the Rocky Desert. I was in the grassy fields first time round, and I put my home there, and that's because basically there are there's iron nodes here. You've got coal down here, which I'm using at the moment, and there's a coal power plant here, but it's a small one, and I will be disconnecting that in due course. But then you'll want things like quartz and sulfur and bauxite and caterium rather. And things like that. So it's best to go exploring to see what you can find. So you can see I've explored all the way down here. This is another option potentially where I might want to go, because it has loads of coal, it has sulfur, it has pure iron. There's quartz over here as well. So it's trying to get to a position where you want to be satisfied. But, and I say this in all heartness, try not to think about one location for your factory and that's it, because it isn't going to work. The world is massive. You've got 4 biomes. You've got your rocky desert, your fields. You've got the northern forest, which is up and down, different levels depending on rock kind of formations or whatever, and obviously the dune forest. That's not dune, the dune desert when there's literally nothing around, plenty of flat ground, but hardly any kind of resources that are suitable for what you need. There's very little water, for example. So my thoughts on this is to get through the early stages, do what you need to do. But once you've gone past that stage, think about where you want to be. And also remember, use, again, I probably mentioned in the previous video, the MAM unit, the MAM research. Research as much as possible. Like, for example, the Power Poles 2, they are from the research, the MAM research. The reason why, kind of like going back to what I said before, is that my long-term view to have what I would deem 5 or 6 centers. So you have a center that solely deals with smelters. So you get your miners. So you find nodes that are close to each other. You get the mining nodes, and then you transport those mining nodes short distances as much as possible to begin with into a central area, and then those resources you are generated in an area that are totally smelters. So you might designate, I don't know, 4 or 5 to iron, 4 or 5 to copper, and so on. And I've gone through kind of looked on. There's a website called Fandom Wiki, and I've looked at every building that is actually useful within the factory. So that's your constructors, your foundry, your refinery, your assembler, and obviously the smelter, and what resources are needed in each area. So again, you have one area for all your smelters, you have another area for all your foundries, another area for all your constructors, and don't have them in the same factory. It's great to see these massive factories being shown on YouTube channels. Yeah, this is how my perfect factory is, and that's absolutely fine. I have not taken away from that at all. If you want to go down that route, fantastic. But I've found myself looking at those videos and being heavily confused and heavily kind of thinking, am I going to enjoy the game if I try and do exactly what they're doing? Because again, they're showing you items that are being done with the resources that a lot of people in early game don't have. So just remember, this is my opinion, take it as you see it. Kind of concentrate on where you want to play the game and not how other people are saying, this is how I want to build my factory, this is how I want to do this. Think about how you want to do. So eventually, my plans will be is that I will have a center area designed for each type of building. So your assemblers, your foundries, your refineries, and so on. And they'll be in different parts of the map. And yes, they will require resources being transported. And if it means me, for the time being, getting in that tractor and traveling to those locations manually, then fine, I'll do that for now. And eventually I will then plan to get to the point of putting in the trains and the truck stations and that, and automating the routes. But it's a long game. And I think if we try and go too fast, you will struggle. You will struggle. I definitely have. I mean, I've rebuilt this factory probably 3 times since I've actually started again, and it's going to be rebuilt again for the 4th time in due course. The idea is to try and enjoy the game as much as you can, and I think that's the way that I would deal with it. Is kind of enjoy it to that point where it suits your gameplay, and not what other people have said. Not even me, if necessary. That's fine. So that's pretty much it for today. I've kind of rattled on the last 5 minutes, and I hope that's kind of been a benefit to you. If not, totally understand if you switched off by now. But if you've got any questions or comments or tips, even rather, that you want to put on there, on below, then please do. I'm more than happy to kind of have discussions, constructive discussions with people about how they're planning their factories, how they feel that it's working for them. Just to give yourself ideas. We're all here to help each other where we can, playing a game. That's the whole point. To try and get yourself to that position. So anyway, I shall leave you to it for now. Thank you indeed for watching. Enjoy your next stage in however you play your game. And then hopefully my next video will be talking about tiers 5 and 6 from the space elevator. Also, I'm going to start, try and generate those videos in regards to centers of particular buildings. So a video about how my smelters are in one area and how they managed to do it and all that sort of thing. Thank you indeed for listening. Enjoy the game, and I'll catch you on the next video.